English is the most spoken language in the world, but it's not the only language in the world. So, since many Hype projects go international, how does one add multilingual support to a Hype project? Well, this is not a native feature of Hype. You could try to create lots of scenes and then the website visitor could pick the language that they want. That's not so impressive as it's lots of tedious work for website creators and it's not very intuitive for website visitors. Could this be more dynamic? It can. Here's how. First, an empty shell is set up. It contains the HTML elements that will be altered with JavaScript. For this project, just text is being changed, but with this technique, you could also change images or even scenes. This project is just one scene though. The idea is to change the main emoji, the secondary emoji, the welcome text, the main message, and the country text. The top right is for development. This space shows the country code. A quick preview shows the end result. The welcome message is, "Hey there." The main message says, "This is an example of using multiple languages in Hype." There's a bear emoji at the bottom left. I probably should have put a bald eagle, but that shows the whole eagle, not a close-up of the face. This makes more sense if you click one of the flag icons at the bottom right. There's a United States flag, which is the current country, but there's also one for Great Britain and Australia. The joke here is that the text has a bit of an accent. The emoji and the text changes based on the region selected. There's a koala for Australia. I'm not sure why I picked a lion for Great Britain. It's not like they're native to those lands. Anyway, while the buttons changed several elements, the top right element was not changed. It still says browser language EN-US. That's the code for United States English. The first two characters are for the language. The second two characters are for the region, as English is somewhat different in the United States as compared to Great Britain or Australia. So that's where the coding starts. Many people pick Hype because it's a no-coding solution for web animation. It even says so on the app's official homepage, "No coding required." Yet coding is required to add features like this. That starts with the scene event. On scene load, run the multilingual JavaScript function. It contains less than 45 lines of code, and it's a great way to learn a lot about JavaScript. First, we're getting the navigator language. That's the language that the web browser is using. It's usually the same language that the operating system is using. So, if you're using a Mac that's set to United States English, then typically the browser would also be set to United States English. That's what the first line of code is doing. It's getting the language code. It's being stored with the NL variable, which is short for navigator language. This line of code is technically unnecessary, as you could just use navigator.language instead of a separate variable. I'm just showing you how it works. The language code is essentially data that can be used to expand the functionality of your Hype project. That's shown with the next line. The inner HTML of the language element is being changed to browser language plus the navigator language code. On my computer, that code is EN-US. Those two lines are the core of this project. That's it, just two lines. We're getting the browser language and then updating an element accordingly. However, if you have lots of elements to update, that would be a lot of tedious lines of code to write. That's the next part of this project. It's a multi-dimensional array. Ooh! That sounds technical, but basically, this is a spreadsheet, as the array has a header row for the languages and a header column for the elements. If you need more information on how this works, the 7th free Hype template covers the creation of a two-dimensional JavaScript array from spreadsheet data. That's the beauty of these templates. They're like building blocks. You can put the lessons together from the separate templates to build awesome things. And here, this is way simpler than the Capitals quiz template. You can see all of the data without scrolling. There's the country text, the welcome text, the main message text, the main emoji, and the animal emoji. Does this make sense to you? If you're still confused, you can leave a comment. Maybe I can help. For the next part, I'm setting a variable called index to have a value of 1. The name is something that I picked. It represents the index number to be used in the array. It's also important to remember that JavaScript arrays start at 0. That sounds very technical, so here's a way to understand what's going on. Just count. In the first row of the multidimensional array, there are 4 values: ID, en-us, en-gb, and en-au. Now, just count it like a computer. 0, 1, 2, and 3. That's why headers are nice, as it keeps the numbers more human. Our first language is United States English, so that's what the code is doing. By default, the language is set to en-us. Use the first column of the language data. This next part is a conditional. It's checking for 3 things. First, it's checking to see if you click the flag button. If you look at each of those elements in Hype, you can see that they're prepped for this code. First, they each have an ID name that is their equivalent language code. That keeps things really simple. Next, they each have a class name of flag button. Since this JavaScript code is executed when the scene is loaded, but also when a flag button is pressed, this is a way for the code to know the difference. That's the purpose of element.classList.contains. It returns a true or false value. The element is one of the parameters of this Hype function. In other words, what element was used to trigger this event? If that element contained the class name flag-button, then return true. If the condition is true, then change the value of the index variable to what matches in the first row of the multidimensional data array. So, if you click the button with an ID of en-gb, then the script will look for a matching value. When it finds that value, it will return the index number. If it doesn't find a match, it will return -1. That's the purpose of the indexOf method. It should find that value, as every button has a corresponding column in the data. That's an important part of setting up this project. The IDs of the elements should match the data in the array. The next line is optional, but a nice feature. If the website visitor clicked a button, then that choice is saved as a user preference. That way, when the page is reloaded, the language choice stays the same. That's the second part of the conditional. If a button element wasn't clicked, what was the language choice previously set? If there is a value greater than 0, then switch to that language. Well, here it's just changing the value of the index variable. For the third part of the conditional, the program is looking for a language match. If you didn't just click a button, or you didn't set the language preference previously, then is there a match with the browser language and the languages available in the data array? If there is a match, then the indexOf method will return the number to use. If there isn't a match, the indexOf method returns a value of -1. That's why the condition is looking for values greater than 0. The final part is where the action happens. That's with the ini function. I named it after a type of belly button, as it modifies the inner HTML of the elements. That's the importance of the first column of the data. It's a list of element names. Each row corresponds to one element. Once again, it's important that your element names match the data in the array. You can just check that in Hype. As an example, the welcome text bubble has an ID of welcome. The ini function contains a loop. For each row in the multidimensional array, an element is updated. Using Hype's JavaScript API, you can get an element by ID. The ID is from the first column. You can see that here. Data is the array. The first pair of brackets is for the number of the row that we're working on. That's why we start at the number 1. A for loop runs until the condition is false. So, starting from the number 1, keep adding 1 until that value is greater than the number of items in the data array. Basically, keep the loop going for every row, except the first row. That gets skipped. And each time the loop is executed, change the inner HTML of the specific element. That's where the index variable is used. In the data array, find the row in the first pair of brackets, and then find the column with the second pair of brackets. That's the two-dimensional array in action. The function doesn't run automatically, so that's the job of the last part of code. The whole code is less than 45 lines, and that's with comments and text formatting to make it readable. This project is self-contained. Once downloaded, internet access is not required. Hype projects don't have to go online. They could be standalone apps or used in kiosks. That's why this template is useful. If you have questions about this template, you can leave a comment. Maybe I can help. And if you want to learn more about Hype, you might like a book about Hype. It's a detailed guide on how to use Tumult Hype.